I miss the open road. After traveling from California to Illinois by car recently, I promised myself I would do many more road trips in the future. I miss listening to true crime podcasts and eating snacks as I mindlessly drove towards a never-ending horizon. It was bliss, until the sun in the sky began to sink lower and lower, and my dread rose higher and higher. I'm sure you'd agree that driving alone at night on an empty interstate would heighten your paranoia. A car parked on the side of the road might just be occupied by a murderous hitchhiker's unsuspecting victim. That car in the other lane passing you could pull a U-turn to tail you. Better check your rearview mirror. On a night with a bright moon, you might see the silhouettes of sleeping cows as you turn your gaze to the vast fields on either side of you. You might feel a sense of peace, your paranoia waning as you listen to your music, never knowing the untold truth of the acres of land that surround you. And if you're driving in Southeast Texas, that truth may be more horrifying than you can ever imagine. In this region, there exist acres of land that have gruesomely been dubbed the Texas Killing Fields. A tragically suitable name, as the bodies of 30 murder victims have been found cruelly discarded in them. These fields are commonly mistaken for a singular patch of land bordering Interstate 45 outside of Houston, Texas. In actuality, this infamous patch of land was the final resting place of 4 victims, with the rest of the discovered bodies found spread over a large area from Houston to Galveston. Unfortunately, a large number of these murders remain unsolved. The vileness of the Texas killing fields does not stop there. In addition to the discovered bodies, there remain numerous young girls that have disappeared from the area and have yet to be found. You might be asking, why are all of these terrible crimes being committed in such a small area in the United States? There are surely countless reasons you can point to, but a large factor remains the incredibly remote acres of land surrounding the major cities there. Looking at the area via satellite imaging, alarm bells immediately started ringing in my head. I am familiar with the northeast part of Texas, as I used to live in Dallas for some time. Many times my job required me to drive into the middle of nowhere to meet clients. But looking at the terrain in the Texas killing fields, I now know I got off easy. There are tons of fields that are extremely remote, yet easily accessible via spooky back roads. Just park your car on the side of these roads and start walking. Flat ground not your style? How about acres of dense woods with trees packed so tightly together you can't see the forest floor? Maybe if you trek deeply enough, you can reach the bayous running through many of these woodlands and take a refreshing swim. Of course, the people that committed these heinous crimes did not have recreation in mind when traveling to these remote areas. This was horrifically apparent in the month of November in 1971, during which the bodies of 2 missing teenagers were discovered in a bayou under an old wooden bridge. It was just another Sunday for 15-year-olds Maria Johnson and Debbie Ackerman. Residents of Galveston Island, they felt at home in the water, pursuing aquatic sports like surfing and water skiing as hobbies. They had grown close incredibly quickly upon meeting each other, and the pair soon became best friends. The plan for the day was ice cream, a treat that almost always sounds good in Texas weather. Their actions were witnessed by a former classmate that was in the Baskin-Robbins ice cream shop they arrived to. After purchasing their desserts, the former classmate reported seeing them talking to a man that was driving a white van. After some time, the pair entered the van and it drove off. It was the last time anyone would see them alive again. Some of you might be shaking your heads at the idea of getting into a vehicle with a complete stranger, but it was surprisingly common in the 1970s. Apparently, hitchhiking became popular during World War II, as cars were in short supply in the United States and gasoline was a commodity. It is then extremely tragic that the girls were doing something they viewed as extremely normal, as they would have been painfully unsuspecting of the driver and their final destination. During my research, I was able to find hints as to the location where I believe this crime took place. Clues from an ex-homicide detective that had worked on the case and a curious fisherman helped me form a visualization of the graphic crime. Police reports state that the killer had unlocked a gate that prevented access to an old unpaved road. He then drove his van down this road and parked it near an old wooden bridge, where he either carried or forcibly marched the girls onto it. It is known that the killer had a .38 caliber pistol on him. He tied their hands and the girls were stripped from the waist down. The pair were then forced into the waist-deep water at gunpoint, or were physically thrown into it. At that point, the killer used his weapon to fire upon the girls from close range, ending their lives. The pair had been missing for 2 days before their bodies were found in Turner's Bayou. On a side note, I was unable to find the exact location of Turner's Bayou. If anyone has any input on this matter, it would greatly satisfy my curiosity. The murder of these 2 girls is without question an awful event. But if we try to look at the minuscule silver lining of the situation, we can find some solace in the fact that their remains were located and put to rest. Many in the Texas killing fields do not share in this tragically meager excuse for good fortune. Take, for example, Suzanne Renee Richardson, a 22-year-old college student that has been missing from Galveston since October of 1988. A student of Texas A&M University, Suzanne was working for Casa del Mar condos as a night clerk, presumably to cover her expenses. She worked in an office space and was routinely checked on by the security guards at the complex. The guards checked in on her at around 6 a.m. the morning of her disappearance, and everything seemed normal. Some time after that, a coworker that was sleeping in a room above Suzanne's office heard some troubling sounds. A female scream followed by a car door slamming shut. Then another scream followed. She heard the sound of a car speeding out of the parking lot shortly thereafter. The timeline was refined when at 6:30 a.m., a guest arrived at Suzanne's office only to find it empty. No signs of a struggle were found. Her purse, books, and car were all left at the complex. A terrible clue was found later on that morning in the parking lot, one of Suzanne's shoes. She continues to be missing to this day, with the security guards being the last people to ever see her. So far, I have outlined pretty devastating events that have occurred in the Texas killing fields. If you're anything like me, you're eager to know what kind of justice has been dispensed to the scum that have perpetrated these crimes. Unfortunately, we'll have to wait a little longer for justice. In the case of Suzanne Richardson, suspects regarding her disappearance keep shifting. It was believed that someone named Gabriel Soto was involved in her kidnapping, but he was never charged with anything. It is very difficult to find anything on Gabriel. I was unable to even find his relation to Suzanne. He was arrested by police in the early 2000s after trying to run over someone with his car. That someone had warned Gabriel to avoid a witness that had seen him and Suzanne talking on the night she was abducted. My only guess is that Gabriel's anger in relation to being connected to Suzanne's disappearance made him suspicious to law enforcement. Gabriel died in 2002 owing to a drug overdose, and his lead slowly went cold. In 2004, another witness claimed that she had seen 2 men digging up Suzanne's remains in 1992, but when police investigated the sites and found bones, they turned out to be from an animal. No further suspects are being considered at this point, and her case remains unsolved. However, there was a clear suspect for the murders of Maria Johnson and Debbie Ackerman, Edward Harold Bell. This guy owned a white 1971 Ford van, lived in an apartment along Offutt's Bayou, which is the area where the girls went to ski school, and had invested in a surf shop that both girls visited before their deaths. If that wasn't enough, he even confessed to the crime 30 years after it had happened. While in prison, He wrote a letter in which he stated that he was brainwashed by his father's abuse into killing the girls. But then, in 2017, he was visited by news reporters to whom he confessed that he had written the letter in hopes that it would lead to his execution. Uncertainty was again thrown into the mix, and he was never charged with anything related to the girls' murders. Edward Bell died in April of 2019 after collapsing in prison while serving his 70-year sentence for killing Larry Dickens. The murders of Maria Johnson and Debbie Ackerman remain unsolved to this day. The Texas killing fields are naturally peaceful acres of land tainted by some despicable humans. Murders or disappearances that occur in this area are most likely doomed to remain unsolved for years. Due to easy access of the land and its remoteness, it is unlikely a witness will catch a murder in the act, or that a missing person's body will be found among the tens of thousands of acres. Given these circumstances, it almost seems that all efforts to solve these mysteries are futile. It would seem that way, but thankfully, humans are stubborn creatures. Very recently, in April of 2019, police were able to identify the remains of two previously unknown women who had died near Calder Road in League City. The missing piece of the puzzle? Advancements in DNA technology. The families and friends of Audrey Cook and Donna Prudhomme now have some closure thanks to the continued efforts of law enforcement. With their identities now known, there is hope that someone will know something about the circumstances leading up to their deaths. And if there is a murderer responsible, justice will come for them. In tragedies like this, it is imperative to hold out hope that there is some light on the other side of the darkness. Whether that be a missing person being found, a murder solved, or a criminal brought to justice. The key is to remember the missing and those who have been taken from us far too soon, and to keep fighting for the justice they deserve, because it will be worth it in the end. My goal in creating this video was to bring more attention to the tragic criminal cases in the land between Houston and Galveston. I was also hoping to renew the interest of those that had already heard of this topic. Although I only covered a few cases, I encourage you to look into this topic and educate yourself on the countless other unsolved crimes I missed. You never know if something you know might help solve a case. To report any information regarding the cases of Maria Johnson and Debbie Ackerman, call this number. To give any information regarding the cases of Audrey Cook and Donna Prudhomme, please call this number. Life is extremely fragile. Enjoy it, stay safe, and always trust your instincts. Catch you later.